Next we have Stanton 2.
Hi guys, we chose case 2, which is factors influencing voter turnout. We chose this case because political representation is really important, and choosing a representative that can showcase the political views that you support will be really beneficial for the nation as more political participation increase, some issues that the nation has can be solved. And what we did was we compiled some data that can help us determine the demographic factors that causes a lack of political participation in some areas.
So for our data overview, what we did for the first part of this challenge is that we analyzed the data that we had, the data that we were given. So based on the voter records we were given, we analyzed gender, race, party affiliation, zip code, and voter status. And the only thing we changed were some of the names of the columns and any missing or invalid data.
One of the first factors that we took into account was gender, division of voting based on gender, and we noticed that more females voted more than males. This is more because of education attainment and also more civic engagement, because a lot more men are in the workforce more than women. Women have a lot more time to support civic engagement, but also women have typically had a higher education attainment than men. Another factor was race. A lot of more white people tend to vote because they have historically had better access to it, and they were not really as much prejudiced against more access to facilities, and they have higher education there. In Duval County, the distribution based off of zip code, zip codes that were more likely to vote probably had more access to resources and educational facilities, and they probably had electricity to keep up with the current news and affairs that came out this time. This is the same thing for St. John's. These are all basically the same ideas about educational attainment, race, barriers, and access to resources. The data for this, so with inactivity and activity based off of voting, due to the endowment effect, which is a phenomenon that if you get exposure to something, you're more likely to repeat it again. More active voters continue to vote, while inactive voters or people who had voted once were not as much likely.
Okay, so for our solution, we made a logistic regression to classify active and inactive voters. And so we analyzed data of zip codes, race, and then party affiliation through our logistic regression to predict voter activity or inactivity. And so our solution summary is that we analyzed and organized the registration data that we got from Duval and St. John's counties, and then we analyzed voter activity through zip code, race, party, and voter status. So right here we have a choropleth map, which is like a heat map. We did this by downloading geographic data from the website and then using our data using GeoPandas to make a heat distribution map based on activity of voting through zip code. And then, so I'm going to skip a few slides here, but I'll come back to them. The main part of our project was that we used a logistic regression for the top 15 factors of voter inactivity. So we looked for zip code, gender, race, and party, but we found that all 15 of those factors were zip codes, meaning that location is the most determining factor for voter activity. So as you can see that the coefficient down there is negative, meaning that these are all the top 15 factors for inactivity in voting. And this means that these places are more likely to not vote. So to make sure that our results were correct, we did a confusion matrix where we found that for active voting, our graph is very correct, but for inactive voters, it was not as correct because of class imbalance. 93% of our data was for active voters and only 7% of it was for inactive voters. And because this is machine learning, we used an 80-20 training test, which means 80% of the data was used to train the model and 20% of the data was used to test the model. So our model was more likely to assume that somebody was an active voter. And then we also did a calibration graph that showed the exact same thing, better for active voters, less accurate for inactive voters. And then that our key insights for this is that voter engagement varies largely by zip code. So some areas add up to 25% lower active voter rates. And then another useful thing that our our simulation model is that we forecasted results for new voters. So I came up with 5 random tests of new voters based on random zip codes, race, and parties. And then they predicted the percent likely average that they would vote or not.
Question from the judges?
What did you use to apply your geo?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What did you use to apply your geo?
I use Python. I just use GeoPandas, which is a library, and then I downloaded the data from. Yeah, I downloaded the geographic data forecasting from like this Florida website, and then using GeoPandas, you can like put it into your directory, and it analyzes it based on the data from our file or the Excel sheet.
Okay, let's thank